Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, and share buttons. Well, this is a Ponzi scheme of biblical proportions. And I think this is one of the most important topics we can discuss right now, because when this Ponzi scheme collapses, a new global monetary system will have to be established. And I think it's highly likely that new monetary system will include central bank digital currencies, digital IDs, and other measures that make the mark of the beast system come into place, lay the foundations for that mark of the beast system. So what is the Ponzi scheme that I'm talking about? Let's take a look at this chart right here. This is from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. It's M2, they call it money supply. It's really currency supply. This is supposed to be a measure of all the dollars that are in existence, but they changed this over the years to make the data say what they want it to say and to try to hide it from the rest of us. But it's the best we have to go with, right? And if you look at this, and we go back to, say, August 1971. Why do I go back to that point? Because that is when President Richard Nixon severed the dollar's convertibility to gold. Up until that point of time, from 1944 to August 1971, other nations could turn in dollars to the United States in exchange for a set specific weight of gold. So the dollar was gold backed in some way. Since that moment, it has been nothing but fiat currency, which means that it only derives its value from government fiat, the government saying it has value and everybody else believing it does. And of course, what's important about this is that from that moment forward, all the currencies in the world that are used all over the world, whether it's the dollar or the euro or the yen or the pound, whatever it is we're talking about, they're all fiat currencies. And so if we look at this chart, we see, again, based on their stats, the amount has gone up more than 30-fold in the last almost 53 years since Nixon ended that convertibility to gold. So why do I bring this up? Well, I've been thinking about this for a couple of weeks now. We did a prophecy roundtable a couple of weeks ago with me and John Holler, Scott Townsend, and Patrick Wood. And Patrick Wood said something in the middle of that, and I wanted to go, oh, we need to talk about this, but it would have been a complete tangent from what we were talking about. And I didn't want to divert off into this rabbit hole. But he said something that was so profound, most people do not understand it. He said, we have a debt-based monetary system. And he is absolutely correct. Now, what does that mean? Well, when you think about in the past, when the United States was founded, and for much of the 19th century, most of the industrialized world had used real money, gold, silver, and copper coinage. That's not based on debt. That's real physical value held in your hands. And then they invented these little pieces of paper so that people wouldn't have to carry around the heavy gold coins and bars. And they said these are redeemable for the real money. Well, somewhere along the way, people confused those claim tickets with the real money. And then over time, they said, well, this will get you partial amounts of gold, until eventually they said, well, it won't get you any at all. It's just a piece of paper, but it's got value, right? And as we all know, it does not have value. That erodes over time through inflation. That is purposeful. Inflation is not something that's a natural law of the universe. It's a natural law of these fiat currencies that governments and central banks use to rob ordinary citizens of their wealth. And so we're going to talk about that system and how that's based, and the fact that it's a Ponzi scheme that is going to come to an end. I believe we're getting very close to the end of it now. And when it collapses, it's going to be a calamity on a scale we have never seen before. We would have to go back to the Great Depression to see anything on par with what we're going to see. So let's talk about this debt-based system. What does this mean? Well, let's use an example. Most people think that, well, the way the banking system works is I go and I deposit my cash at the bank, and then they lend it out to my neighbors to buy, so they could get loans to buy cars and homes and other things, and then they pay that back in interest with interest, and I get part of that interest, and the bank gets part of that interest. Well, that, in theory, is how banking should work. It is not how banking works today. In fact, we've been over, if you look at the Federal Reserve website, the reserve requirements of the bank are 0%. So they don't have any of your cash on hand there. And they lend out far more than they take in. In fact, they just create cash out of thin air. The currency is created not necessarily by a printing press, but by the banking system loaning that cash into existence. So let's take an example. Let's say we have an economy that has $0 in it, and we want to create dollars. So I'm going to take an example, our famous motion picture currency here. This is, we would call it a counterfeit $10 bill, but as we know, even the real $10 bills are counterfeit. They're a piece of paper, just like this one, right? But let's say I loan you $10. Okay, so now we went from an economy that had $0 to an economy that had $10. But in doing so, I said, well, I want you to pay me back 10% interest. So I want you to pay me back $11, right? And once you've paid off the $11, the loan's paid off, we're fair and square, right? Everything's good to go. Well, there's a problem, right? Because in our economy, well, there's only $10, right? So if there's only $10, how are you supposed to pay back 11, right? So that's a good question. It's impossible for you to pay back $11 in a world where only $10 exist. So here's the solution, right? Here's the solution they came up with. Well, let's lend somebody else $10, right? Now there's $20 in the economy, so you're able to pay the $11 back. And you go, well, yeah, that sounds great, Britt, but only one problem. I'd assume you'd want interest from that person you just lent the new $10 from. Yeah, with the same terms, 10%, so they owe 11 as well. So now we have an economy where $22 is owed back, but only $20 exists, right? So how is that mathematically going to work out? Well, simple. We'll loan somebody else $10, right? And then there's 30. Do you see what the issue is and what the problem is? So guys, we are in a debt-based economy, and by its very nature, it has to continually expand, meaning the debt load has to continuously expand. If it does not, if it stalls out, or if it contracts, the whole thing comes crashing down. Now, what does that sound like to you? Well, it sounds like a Ponzi scheme to me. And guys, that is exactly what it is. It's a Ponzi scheme. It is dependent on an ever-growing amount of credit and debt to be taken out in order to continue going. Otherwise, the wheels come off the bus and the whole thing falls apart, just like a Ponzi scheme. So if you don't believe me, let's take a look at this other chart right here. This is also from the Federal Reserve. This is all sectors, debt, securities, loans. So this is all the debt, right? So this includes, I guess, government debt. It includes mortgage debt, auto loan debt, states and localities, the debt that they owe, $98.3 trillion. And as you can see, well, we've just been increasing the debt, increasing. Oh, look at this. We hit a little snag right here where it slightly leveled off, maybe decreased, I don't know, a fraction of a percentage point before increasing, right? So this little divot right here where debt sort of leveled off, didn't even necessarily contract. It may have contracted slightly, but that little divot right there we see on this otherwise upward line of debt creation, that's what we would know as the Great Financial Crisis. And it required trillions of dollars in central bank bailouts and band-aids and federal programs to keep the wheels from coming off the bus, because if they had not done those things, the Ponzi scheme that we're looking at right here would have collapsed back then. It would have completely imploded on itself. Think about that example we were just talking about where we're lending $10 into existence and we have to continually do that. Well, what happens when someone defaults on their loan? They say, well, I can't pay it back. I declare bankruptcy. Well, that currency disappears from the equation. So the currency supply contracts when that happens. Whenever somebody pays back a loan or defaults on a loan, it contracts the currency supply. Whenever credit is extended and someone takes on more debt, the currency supply increases. So if you have a scenario where someone declares bankruptcy and the currency supply is decreasing overall, well, now we look at this little divot here. Dollars become harder to acquire, right? Because there's not this continuous expansion of the dollar supply or whatever currency you're dealing in, because this applies to, as I said, every currency in the world right now is a fiat currency. So when the currency supply levels off or begins to shrink, it becomes very hard to find those dollars. And so many people, they can't find those dollars, meaning they've lost their income, an income stream, their business has slowed down, they've lost their job, whatever it may be. And they can't meet those debt obligations, so they declare bankruptcy, they default. Well, that causes the currency supply to shrink. And guess what? When that happens, dollars or whatever other currency you're using becomes even harder to find. And then that leads to more defaults and on and on and on. That's called a deflationary spiral. It's exactly what we saw during the Great Depression. We saw defaults throughout the economy, businesses going bankrupt, individuals going bankrupt. We saw banks failing, and all the depositors lost everything. So the currency supply shrank. Dollars became harder to find. If you read stories of that time, people will say, well, there just wasn't any money, is what they might say. Nobody had any money, is what they'll say. Because the credit supply had contracted, that debt supply, the debt was not continuing to expand, and the system collapsed in and of itself. If you want to learn more about this, we've talked about this before, head over to this YouTube channel, Gold Silver with Mike Maloney, and watch Mike Maloney's Hidden Secrets of Money. If you have not seen this series, I think there's 9 in this series, there's 10 episodes in this series. This is something you should binge watch to learn how the world works, how the global economy works. And if you watch, I believe it's specifically in episode 4, he talks about this concept and he illustrates it a whole lot better than I do. But watch this series and learn how our current debt-based monetary system works. Because if you don't understand how it works, well, then you're going to get taken advantage of by all of these central bankers and governments that are using this to rob you of your wealth. So guys, another thing to check out, if you haven't been by the Substack, go to brittgillette.substack.com, click on this notes tab, and there you'll see a link to this video right here where Alex Newman at Liberty Sentinel, he has a video where he explains this exact same concept and what this is all about, how central bankers, how governments are using the monetary system and using inflation to rob citizens of their wealth. It's how they extract power and wealth at our expense. In order to combat this, you have to understand it. You have to understand what we're dealing with. And guys, I encourage you, go over to the Substack and subscribe if you want to continue to get notifications of these videos, because I've noticed on YouTube again that some shadow banning going on. You can just see it in the stats. I can watch it and know, and it comes with specifically videos like this. So if you're unsure and you think you're subscribed to this channel on YouTube, double check. You can't be sure that you are. If you want to make sure that we always have this connection and big tech can't sever this connection, go over to the Substack and make sure you're signed up. It's free. You sign up, you get notifications of these videos when they come out. Because guys, I've seen this on other channels too. There's a channel on YouTube called Sachs Realty, and they were interviewing John Rubino last week talking about these same topics. They said they usually get thousands of people on a live stream and they had 40. And I guarantee you it's because they were talking about the very types of topics we're talking about now, where we talk about the United States and the US dollar as the world's reserve currency and that coming to an end. We talk about the pressures on the United States economically, militarily in the Red Sea. We talk about this whole Ponzi scheme coming to an end, the fiat currency Ponzi scheme, and the rollout of a new monetary system. They don't want you to hear this because it's some of the biggest news of our time. It will impact every single person on the planet. Guys, we're coming to the end of this current monetary system. And we can see that happening with the banking crisis that's going to come. Let's look at this article right here from Reuters. It says, Fed says 1,804 banks and other institutions tapped emergency lending facility. It says some 1,800 depository institutions tapped the emergency lending facility set up last March 2023 in the wake of Silicon Valley Bank's collapse, amounting to about 20% of all eligible firms. About 95% of the borrowers, which included banks, credit unions, savings associations, and branches and agencies of foreign banks, had less than $10 billion in assets. So, hey, no problem. These were all small, institutions. Of course, if you had your cash there, you might be concerned. But they don't tell us the whole story in this article. So Bloomberg did. It's behind a paywall, but this guy on Twitter shared some of the information that was in that, where they talk about the Fed's release of their financial stability report. And in that, 95% were these small banks. What were the other 5%? Well, 98 banks with assets of more than $10 billion also tapped the funding. In other words, well over 50% of all large institutions took advantage of the concessionary terms of the Bank Term Funding Program versus only 20% or so of smaller banks. So guys, the banking system is in trouble. Now, some of this may be due to this arbitrage opportunity we talked about at the time we saw this going up, but it's not all of it. There is stress in the banking system for reasons we've talked about before. And one of those reasons, at the top of all of those reasons, is our debt-based monetary system is a Ponzi scheme, and it's reaching the limits of its growth. And as with any Ponzi scheme, once it can no longer grow, it completely collapses. And guys, that's what we're seeing around the world. Take a look at this chart of gold. So this goes back as far as CNBC would take it to 1985. Gold priced in dollars. And go, look at that, gold's going up. No, gold isn't going up. The dollar is going down, meaning it takes more dollars to buy the same amount of gold. And we're seeing it spike recently because, again, gold is real. It's not debt-based. I want to turn your attention to this video on YouTube. You can go check this out on YouTube if you want to. But this is thousands of people in China, I believe in February, lined up, 800,000 it says, to buy gold. And when the doors opened to this mall, they rushed in and they cleaned out all the gold at these jewelry counters that they could get their hands on. Because, guys, China is in the grips of a deflationary spiral right now. They understand what's happening. People are catching on that, oh, I don't have financial security by holding on to this promise to build an apartment in some high rise, which is how many Chinese were investing their retirement savings. That was a Ponzi scheme. I can't count on government currency, so they're turning to gold. The world is turning to gold because they understand the end of these fiat currencies are coming to their end. We talked, I believe in the last video or the one before, about the last 2 years have seen more central bank gold purchases than any time since 1968, 1969, right before Nixon closed that gold window. So guys, for thousands of years, gold and silver were money. That was what people used to make transactions. It's only relatively recently, the last almost 53 years, that we've decided that little pieces of paper or ones and zeros on a computer screen, that's money. And as this Ponzi scheme collapses, people are going to realize, they're going to find out otherwise, but they're going to need a new monetary system. You might call it, well, a great reset, right? So the people in power, they know this stuff is coming. Yes, some of them are plotting and planning. Some of the people in power are just clueless and ignorant. But all of this was put in motion before anybody who is alive today was born. But the people who understand this is coming are the ones positioning themselves to hold on to power. So the people who are in power now, they're trying to hold this back and kick the can down the road as long as they can. That's why all of this didn't collapse back during the great financial crisis, because they are in power now and they don't want to lose that power. So they know that eventually they won't be able to kick the can down the road. This whole system will collapse. When it does, they don't want to lose their power and the chaos that will ensue. So they're putting together plans and plotting as to how they will remain in power. And that's why we hear so much about central bank digital currency, digital IDs, cashless society. Oh, we need to put limits on how much cash people can deposit, how much they can withdraw. In Europe, we're going to make it a criminal activity to use cash to buy anything more than 1,000 euros worth of goods. All of these things, they're putting these measures in place because they want to direct everybody to the central bank digital currencies and the digital currency that they can use to control everybody on the planet so that they can maintain power. So they understand this is coming, and that's what they're going to roll out when this finally does collapse. They're going to push these forward as the solution. We've talked about some of the reasons they'll do that. They'll say, oh, well, we need surveillance to make sure that a crisis like this never happens, because they won't blame it on the system itself. They won't say, hey, this fiat currency system was a Ponzi scheme, it was bound to collapse. No, they'll say, it was Bob over there running that hedge fund, or it was this bank over here. Can't believe they did that. Or everything was going well until that war in the Middle East, and then who saw that coming? And then it all collapsed. They'll blame it on something else, but then they'll say, but we need to restore confidence in the financial system, and here's how we do it. Everybody set up your digital wallet and go claim your central bank digital currency. There's $10,000 waiting for you. Or what? That doesn't entice you? How about $50,000? Or how about, we know you lost your retirement account when the whole system collapsed, and we think that's unfair, so you can have the cash equivalent back, but you only get it in this central bank digital currency. And you have to set up digital ID in the process, as this is what they're going to use. They're going to use fear, and they're going to use all of these different incentives, just as we saw in the last 4 years in regard to getting people to do other things that they didn't necessarily want to do. Hey, come get this and you get a cheeseburger and some fries, right? So incentives, you get tickets to the ball game, you get this, and then they go, who are the holdouts? You better come do this or you can't go to the game. You can't go to the restaurant and get the burger and fries. You can't work, can't have a job. So they're going to use these incentives. They're going to use rewards and punishments to corral you into this system. This is what is coming, guys. It's a Ponzi scheme. Mathematically, this cannot continue on forever. What cannot continue on forever will not continue on forever. So this is coming to an end. I believe we're getting closer and closer. I don't know specifically what day or time this is all going to happen, but it will happen. It will collapse. I believe that's when they begin to roll out this whole system that the Antichrist and the false prophet will eventually turn into the mark of the beast system during the tribulation period. So guys, I know all of this sounds dire. There's no need to be concerned about this if you know Jesus Christ. If you know Jesus, we're all sinners. We're all born sinners. The Bible says the wages of sin is death. That means we're bound to be eternally separated from God because of our sin. Because the good news is that Jesus, he came to earth, he lived a perfect sinless life, and then he died on the cross. Obediently, he shed his blood and paid the price for our sin. He paid the penalty. He died as a substitute for us so that we could have eternal life. And guys, he rose from the dead. He had victory over the grave. If you know Jesus, you have nothing to fear in this world whatsoever. And especially the tribulation, because I believe the Bible clearly teaches that Jesus will come back for the church in something known as the rapture prior to the 7-year tribulation. So guys, there's no reason to be worried over all of this. We do need to show concern for the world, and we need to be telling people the good news. We need to tell people the hope we have in Jesus Christ and how we can have peace in the midst of seeing this evil system being rolled out right here before us and knowing what's coming, because this is going to hit a lot of people hard when this comes. So we need to be preparing so that we can be strong for others for whatever time we're here. I don't know if we'll see any of this, if we'll see some of this. Who knows how long we'll be here? None of us knows how long we'll be here. Any one of us could die tonight. But guys, we need to be sharing with as many people as possible the hope that we have in Jesus Christ. So make sure that you're doing that every day. In the meantime, what do you think? Leave your comments below. Maybe, no, this isn't a Ponzi schemes, no problem. There's nothing to be concerned about here, nothing to worry about here. The debt load is going to grow infinitely forever, right? With no problems. If you believe that, leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. Make sure to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. And God willing, I will see you next time. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to visit my Substack at brittgillette.substack.com. There you'll find my latest videos and articles, as well as notes, where I share the latest news headlines, the articles I'm reading, and the videos I'm watching. Subscribe for free, and each new post on Substack will be sent directly to your email. Just scroll to the bottom of the homepage and hit the subscribe button. As an added bonus, your first welcome email will include a link to a copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt Gillette on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.